Hi, guys. Welcome to an all new episode of the Indic Underground. I'm your host, the Indic Explorer. And today we are going to have a discussion on a very interesting topic, Ayurveda, the ancient Indic medicinal system, about which all Indians know. It's faced criticism in the past from, practitioners of mainstream medicine, but of late, it's come back in vogue. People have started acknowledging the benefits of Ayurveda. The scientific research on this subject has also you know has gathered a lot of pace, and now you see everything from Ayurvedic spa retreats, panchakarma treatments, Satvik Food diet plans, doing surya namaskar, and it goes on and on. Meditation, yoga, massages, and the list is endless. So, to demystify all things with regards to Ayurveda, I have with me today the guest of the show, Dr. Vishakha Moghe. So, she's an Ayurvedic doctor who is based out of Goa.
Hi, namaskar.
You were mentioning about the principles of Ayurveda. So, I wanted to understand Vata, Pitta, and Kapha is like, different body types. So, how does one detect each of these? Like, how does a Ayurvedic practitioner detect that a person falls in which classification? And after you have detected that, how does the treatment vary, like, in terms of each body type? How does it vary?
Yeah. The basic principles of Ayurveda, when you talk about those, you have to first begin with learning about the Tridoshas. Tridoshas means Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Then we have Saptadhatus. There are seven tissues, important tissues in the body: Rasa, Rakta, Mamsa, Meda, Asthi, Majja, and Shukra. And then we have the three Malas, which is Mala, Mutra, and Sweda. They all play their roles in the body. When there is a harmony in all of these, that is labeled as health. A simple definition of health is when there is a harmony of all of these. Now, when there is any kind of disturbance in this because of faulty lifestyle habits, because of faulty or unwholesome food habits, eating habits, improper behavior, so it's also at the mental level that these disturbances can be caused. So when there is a disharmony in all of this, that is the disease state, and the disease could vary from being mild to moderate to severe. So now tridoshas, these are the fundamental principles. They are the fundamental structural and functional units of the body. So if you try to understand this from the Ayurvedic perspective, it may sound like not very scientific. But if you have to decode that from the modern perspective, then these are the structural functional elements of the body which have been assigned certain important functions. They have been assigned these functions, and they are doing this at the cellular level, at the tissue level, at the cellular level. So even though they had their working places in the body, like say, let's for example take the case of Vata. Vata is a dosha which is equated with the movements in the body. So any kind of movement, let's say for example, my lips are moving at the moment I'm talking, that itself is a function of Vata. So Vata is something that has got to do with motion. I blink my eyelids. That itself is the job that Vata is doing in my body.
So, how is it
Now,
detected? Like, if someone is.
yes, so all of these functions are already assigned to the dosha. So if Vata is really regarding movements, it is related to movements. If there comes a patient and he complains that I am not able to move my shoulder, I'm not able to move my hand, there is a difficulty in movements, that itself gives us a clue that there is a Vata Vruddhi in the patient's body. When there is Vata Vruddhi, it could lead to drying up of the tissues or the muscular aspect, the muscles in that area or region, and that is leading to the immobility. Now, paralysis is one case in which there's no functioning of the facial muscles or some parts of the body. It could be hemiplegia or it could be paraplegia. Hemiplegia means just one side of the body is paralyzed. Paraplegia is when the entire body is paralyzed and the patient is completely immobile. So he's completely on bed rest. He's completely dependent on somebody. So these are the examples of heavy Vata Dushti in the patient's body. So these movements are not just related to the physical movements, they are also internal movements. Like there are so many fluids which are being transported from one cell to the other. That itself is a function of Vata. So Vata is not something that is just acting at a physical level, it is also acting at a cellular level. And this job is being done in the entire body, in the tiniest of cell, in your hair as well, in your legs as well, in your joints as well. So all the doshas are present in each and every part of the body. Pitta would be doing all the dynamic activities of conversion, transformation. It is the lustre that you have on your skin is courtesy Pitta. The glow that you have on your face is courtesy Kapha. Kapha is the element that gives weight and shape to the body. And intelligence is what, is the job of Kapha. So imparting intelligence. And that's exactly why when you're trying to boost somebody's intelligence, we would give foods and medicines which would improve the quality of Kapha dosha. So these are the different symptoms in the patient's body that give us an idea of the dosha status in the patient's body. So if there is increased kapha in the patient's body, or there is a dushti or the vitiation of kapha, then there would be abnormal symptoms like, say, there would be itching, there could be inflammation in the body. So inflammation is all because of kapha. So all the inflammatory pathologies will definitely have a disturbance of kapha dosha. So all of these functions are really analyzed through the symptoms in the patient's body. So we have different instruments to check different factors in the patient's body. We have blood tests, we have hormonal tests. So these are also helping us understand the status of doshas in the body. So when the metabolism is poor, the patient would have inflammation in the body. So when there's inflammation somewhere in the body, when there's swelling, the C-reactive protein would increase. So the test of C-reactive protein helps us understand there's inflammation in the patient's body, and that we need to keep him on a diet which will be anti-inflammatory. So this is how we analyze the patient's disease condition, and we try and restore the balance and the harmony of the doshas. So we would prescribe foods and medicines which would be like antagonists to the symptoms or the disease.
Okay. So, for example, like I'm sure there would be an exercise routine like given to patients, like if they are going through some niggles in their body and all of that. So, uh,
Yes.
how is an exercise routine designed in Ayurveda, vis-a-vis allopathy, in terms of what is it targeted at and how is it, prescribed?
So every aspect in Ayurveda is completely subjective. We don't have general rules that apply to every person. Again, the dosha status is analyzed. Now, if let's say a patient comes to you with this question that he wants to have an exercise routine for himself. So the first question that I would ask him is, how is the metabolism and how are his strength levels? If the person, or if the subject is strong enough to be able to get into say rigorous exercise routine, then he would be given a routine that would cater to his body's needs. Now, if this patient is heavy on vata, if he is a vata prakriti individual, a vata prakriti individual is always on the leaner side. You will always see that he's struggling with finding stability in his life. So he's always on the leaner side. And exactly why exercise routine would be very, very mild for such a person, because he will not be able to really tolerate that amount of physical activity. Because again, the physical activity means more movements. More movements means again Vata is going to go out of place. So for a Vata individual, it is going to be about having a very simple exercise routine. And for such a person, yogasanas are more recommended than any other form of exercises, like say gym exercises, gym workouts, aerobics, Pilates, and stuff like that. So for such a person, you would any day recommend a yogic exercise routine. But if it is, let's say, a kapha person is more on the hefty side. He has a hefty stature. He is on the fatter side, and he has probably, more stable joints than a Vata Prakriti person. So this is the right person uh, for a rigorous exercise routine. So we usually see the body structure, we see the functioning of each and every dosha in the patient. We also ask if they are suffering from any diseases, if they have any musculoskeletal issues, if they have any nervous disorders, because there are certain exercises which are not recommended when you have, say, slip discs or herniated discs. If any kind of spinal deformity, it's a no no. Exercise routine is a no no. Then they would be advised very simple exercises, let's say pranayam or some sukshma vyayam, some of the exercises that focus on tiny, tiny parts of the body, say ankles, wrists. So the exercise routine, you have to be extremely careful when you're choosing for yourself an exercise routine.
So, what is like they say early morning around 4 o'clock is Brahma Muhurta. So, what is like the early morning routine prescribed in Ayurveda that a person should do?
Okay, the first thing that is advised. So you see, there's a circadian rhythm of the entire day to the universe, and everything goes based on that. If you see, everything in nature has a rhythm to it, except for humans. Our lives are completely governed by, say, the gadgets now and the daily activities and all that. So but if you actually look out, one day if you decide to just go sit out and observe the birds, the animals outside, they all have a particular rhythm to their activities, everything that they do. You would not see a single bird or animal sleeping after the Brahma Muhurta. Sunrise is a time when you would see the entire, all the natural entities are bubbling with energy. So Brahma Muhurta is a time which is almost 45 minutes before sunrise. So before sunrise is the time when it's the best time to actually attain Brahma. So Brahma means the ultimate knowledge of the universe. So, since there's also a lot of, or let's say there's an abundance of oxygen in the atmosphere, so Brahma Muhurta is considered to be the time which is the best for studies, which is the best for doing something creative in your life. So, the first thing that you wake up and do is empty your bowels. So the Dinacharya starts from here. If you open the Dinacharya chapter of Ashtanga Hriday, you will see that the first shloka is that you have to empty your bowels. Because the time when you wake up in the morning, between 2 to 6 a.m., is when the Vata dosha is dominating. Now, again, Vata is present everywhere. It's present in the universe, it's present in the bodies. So, everything is governed by Vata between 2 to 6. Since Vata is about speed, motion, it is also assisting the body in emptying itself of the debris from the previous day. And this is exactly why the pressure is the maximum between 2 to 6 a.m. Your bowels, there are chances that you will have better bowel movements when you wake up in the morning between 2 to 6 a.m., which is the Vata time, according to the circadian rhythm. So if you wake up at this time, if you empty your bowels first thing in the morning, there are less chances of the bowels or the stools going back into the circulation. The toxins that are released from the base, there are less chances of these going back into the circulation. So that's exactly why it is essential to empty your bowels first thing in the morning, get rid of the malas first thing in the morning, and only then you start with the day. So this is the first thing or first aspect of Dinacharya, which is the most important one. Then comes Danta Dhavan. You brush your teeth after emptying your bowels. So the Mala Mutra Visarjan is considered so important that you have been asked to refrain from doing anything before doing that. So if you are constipated, you are not supposed to even brush your teeth. That is the importance of Mala Mutra Visarjan in the morning. First thing, Mala Visarjan. So the next step is to actually, brush your teeth, which is called Danta Dhavan. Now we have some medicated medicinal sticks, from different trees, using their sticks or twigs for brushing your teeth. So they are supposed to be bitter, they are supposed to be pungent and astringent in taste, because astringent taste has the power of cleansing. When, if you see, what is happening now is completely contradictory. We are taking toothpaste which are sweet in taste. So how do you expect that the toxins from the mouth are going to be evacuated if you're using sweet tasting toothpaste? So, bitter tasting herbs are used for brushing teeth. Powders can be used. The next thing, most important, is to also clean your tongue. So your tongue is also a home to different kind of bacteria, which can also lead to, dental caries, which nobody really considers. So after brushing the teeth, tongue cleaning is the most important aspect. And after that, you have to have an exercise routine for yourself. So you're not supposed to eat anything before doing exercises, before taking a bath. And before you do all of this, so you basically take bath, snana, and then you apply oil to the entire body, which is called abhyanga, and then comes the vyayam activity. So you do the exercises only after these two things are done, because snana is going to boost the metabolism. It will also kind of um, improve the flexibility of your joints with the warm water. So you're ready to kind of, take on the day, and then you get into the exercise routine. So having an exercise routine again based on your body type. Now the interesting thing is, our scriptures have the indications and contraindications for every activity in the dinacharya. So there is a mention of who should not do an exercise, who should not have an exercise routine, who should not be indulging in exercise, who actually should indulge in an exercise routine, who should not take a bath in the morning. Like paralysis cases, fever cases, patients with poor digestion are advised to not, you know, follow the snana regime. So that's how the dinacharya works. And then there's also a mention of what kind of foods you should consume, the rules of eating, right from how you sit, the place of sitting, the kind of food that you should eat, what all should you consider when you're eating meals. All of that comes in the dinacharya chapter of Ashtanga. And that's exactly how your morning routine should be. But I really doubt if any of this is followed now.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I think more awareness is required. Hopefully, that
Yes.
Ayurveda, now that is coming back in vogue, these things will change.
I think it's being taken up by the West now,
Yeah.
and they are packaging it beautifully and presenting it to us back
Yeah,
again.
actually, we are. Yeah, I mean
I
that's
think
the problem we
packaging
have
and
faced
presentation is,
with all Indic knowledge
yes,
systems, that the packaging has
yes,
not been, you know, very contemporary, and I think my belief is that that is the
absolutely.
reason why many times it gets a raw deal.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
were talking about
Right.
chaotic human lifestyles, and that leads to a lot of stress. So, what exactly does Ayurveda stake? What is Ayurveda's take on stress and dealing with stress, and how does it, you know, what kind of treatment is followed for stress-related disorders or ailments?
Right. So mental disorders are termed as Manasa Roga in Ayurveda. And there is a whole chapter that explains why Manasa Rog occur in first place. So you need to have a knowledge of yourself first. So the education has to begin from childhood. You have to be taught the knowledge, you have to be given the knowledge or imparted the knowledge of self. You have to know what your purpose is in life. Do you ever remember learning any of this sort as a child? Because our lives are majorly, I think they revolve around just finishing the tasks which have been given to you, and somehow leading the life, somehow just pushing life. While the Ayurvedic scriptures talk about understanding your purposes, because once you understand the purposes, every act of yours, every thought of yours would be in line with your purpose, which means that you're already leading a productive life since your childhood, ever since you were born, ever since you actually started understanding things, because you've actually gained the knowledge from your past birth, and when you are born in the mother's womb, you already have the knowledge of Atma and Mana. But then there is a curtain of Maya over you, which after you're born, it takes over, and the Maya actually gives you an illusion that you don't know anything at all. So, and the entire society around you will keep, kind of teaching you what you're supposed to do. When a child actually knows more than adults what it is supposed to do. But then the society kills all that creativity, society kills all that knowledge. And then we have these puppets being produced all the time. So, Manasa Dhyan is all about knowing the true purpose. And parents who would know this, there are chances that they will bring up or nurture a better child who will be in line with his purpose, who will know what he's supposed to do. The moment there is a curtain of Maya on this knowledge, when this knowledge does not exist for you, that slowly starts getting converted into manovikara. Manovikar does not necessarily mean, psychiatric disorders or psychiatric ailments. They could also be the vikaras of the mind, which could be mada, moha, matsara, dvesha, raga, krodha, bhaya. All of these, the negative entities of mind, these are also vikaras. These are also diseases. And you hardly come across a person who is balanced in his approach in life. So he would definitely have at least one of these doshas. So even the fact that you realize that you have these vikaras is, it's like realizing what you're supposed to work on. But if you don't know what you're supposed to work on in first place, then I think we have a problem here. And then there are more chances of you being inflicted with manovikaras. So the first thing that Ayurveda tells us is to get the knowledge of self, get the knowledge of your body, your mind, and your surroundings, understand the universe better, because whatever goes on in the cosmos goes on inside you. So when you see yourself as a tiny drop in the entire ocean, the self-centeredness would somewhere go away, and that itself would be an answer to, treating manovikaras. Now, the other easier aspects of treating manovikaras is, you've been advised to be in the company of good people. So when you are in the company of people who have more vikaras in their mind, your entire world starts revolving around those. And you feel this is what life is about. And you lose the charm, you lose the enthusiasm to do something good in life. So the moment you're put into the company of good people, your whole, thinking starts to change, it starts evolving. And that itself takes you kind of a little closer to your actual goals. And then there's no time left to think about these, minute things like which are actually leading to the vikaras, manovikaras. So to be in the company of people that you like, the people with some values. Secondly, to eat foods which are sattva boosting. Sattva means the let's say the essence of mind. Raja and Tama are the vikaras of the mind, while sattva is the guna of the mind. It is a positive entity of the mind. So even the foods that you eat can be classified as, sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. So the foods which generate sattva, which boost the strength of the mind, have been advised to eat in case of, manovikaras. So that's how we deal with stress. There's again counseling as well, because sometimes people are not aware of the true self. So they need to be reminded, they need to be educated on this. Also, having a wholesome regimen is the first secret to having a wholesome life. So having a wholesome regimen or a dinacharya also helps, because then every day you're looking forward to something, achieving one goal per day at least. So this is how Ayurveda manages stress, and it is absolutely, different from how modern science looks at stress. It's not just about suppressing these thoughts. It's not about, popping pills to kind of keep yourself in a numb state so you don't feel any of the sadness. That's absolutely not the way to deal with manovikaras or, stress.
Okay, I mean that's interesting because mental health and Ayurveda is not a well-known topic for most people because typically people focus.
Yes, and not many take up this subject because it's not easy to be a doctor that deals with mental disorders. It requires a lot of patience. It requires a lot of study yourself, of different behaviors, different people, behaviors, and what leads people to that state. It requires a lot of study and research.
What is Ama and how do you treat it? Like, what exactly is Ama?
Okay, so it is pronounced as Aama.
Ama, okay.
Okay, so yeah, yeah, Aama. So if I have to define that in a very simple way, Ama are the toxins or antigens which are present in the body because of faulty or hypofunctioning Agni. Agni is the entity that is actually digesting the food that you consume. Everything that you consume is being digested, processed by the Agni or the digestive fire, to like literally translate that. And that is converting all the food into nutrients, different fluids, which are essential for basically sustaining your body. So, Agni, when there is a hypofunctioning Agni, when the Agni goes for a toss because of constantly eating foods which are not meant for your Prakriti, which are not meant for your disease condition. So, we have something called as unripe agents which are formed because of faulty processing by the Agni that have this heavy and sticky property. So consider these as unripe fruits. You're not supposed to eat unripe fruits, right? Because they are going to generate some kind of issues in the body. They will also lead to malabsorption or maldigestion. So similarly, ama is something which is not properly processed food. So it will neither be, the body would not want to keep them inside you, nor would it be in a position to expel them outside. And they cannot stay in the body without producing disease. So it's a very tricky kind of a situation where these stay in your body, and because of their sticky nature, they will go and adhere to the channels in the body. So, specifically, when you say the gut health is poor, it is because of the armor. It is because of the long standing armor which is lying there for months and which has not been cleansed. So it has the capability of producing the deadliest of diseases. Most of the autoimmune disorders are because of the armor adhering inside your tissues, inside your channels. So the poor gut health is because of this. And this is exactly why the nutrients from your food are not getting absorbed, because there's a tiny film of these antigens, inside your gut. And that's why we have a whole science revolving around gut health. You must have heard that a lot these days. People asking you to focus on your gut health because it has the answer to a lot of brain disorders as well. So this ama is something which is, I think, present in 100% of the population now because of eating viruddha ahar, because of eating incompatible foods, combinations which are not really meant to be eaten together. Because see, foods can be pathya when they are taken singly. Two beneficial foods may be beneficial when taken singly, but when you mix them up, there are certain chemical reactions, there are certain changes that occur inside them, which have the power to disorient your body. They can actually generate some kind of diseases or reactions in the body. So these are the incompatible foods. So number one cause behind ama is consuming these kind of incompatible foods which do not get digested. The agni is not in a position to digest these foods, so they are heavy, they are sticky, they are very slow. So you need to use medicines and foods which will be antagonists to the armor, the properties of armor. And that's how you can take care of this. So autoimmune disease, if you have to take something from this, autoimmune disorders are because of what armor.
So you made a very interesting point on eating incompatible foods. So are there any popular foods or preparations that that's very popularly consumed that is not ideal as per Ayurveda? One I have heard about is banana milkshake, I think. I'm not sure how true that is, but
Yes.
are there any other such popular foods which should not be had as per Ayurveda?
Yeah, if you want to see what incompatible foods are like, you have to just visit a restaurant
My.
and you'll see everything that you're not supposed to eat. You'll see all the additives added, which are not really good for your health. So, incompatible combinations is not just about combining two different foods which are not, beneficial if eaten together. It's also about adding certain agents to them, like say food additives, food preservatives that we add these days. All of these also come under incompatible foods. So, if you want to see examples, you go out, you see the examples. You see cheese added to each and every food item these days. You go to the streets, you want to eat street foods, there'll be cheese added to your dosas as well. There'll be cheese added to your idlis also. So, cheese is one thing that is added to everything, and this could be the biggest example for foods, incompatible foods. Then we have different kinds of fruits which are being mixed together, and then we are also having milkshakes wherein so many different fruits are blend together with milk. So milk is totally contraindicated with sour fruits. So most of the fruits, of course, are sour. So let's say, for example, if I have to talk about one or two fruits which can sometimes be taken with milk, that could be mango and apple. So apple also, if it's sweet, not the sour apple. So none of the sour fruits are recommended with milk. None of the fruits are even recommended with yogurt or curd.
What about Shrikhand and Amarkhand? Because Amarkhand is again mango based. So, is that okay or not?
So, the interesting thing is that we have so many beautiful Ayurvedic recipes in our scriptures. There is a separate book for this called Bhojan Kutuhal and Shema Kutuhal. These are the two books which have been written by our sages, mentioning some really beautiful and interesting recipes. So, Shrikhanda is one recipe which has been mentioned in our Shastra, which means that if eaten in the right proportions and not on a very regular basis but only on festival days, it's not going to cause any problems. In fact, it is nourishing when you eat it once in a while. So amrakhanda and shrikhanda,
Are
both
fine.
of them, if consumed once in a while, it's not going to cause any issues. So they are
Okay.
healthy if
So, I
consumed
want to
sometimes.
understand what exactly is meant by Sattvic food. Like, what constitutes Sattvic food and what benefits does it impart to a person consuming this food?
Yeah. So, like I just mentioned, how Sattvic foods play a huge role in treating manovikaras. So, when you see manovikaras, the Raja and Tamagun are on a rise and the Sattva has gone down. So, any food that will actually help us in increasing the gunas of the mind or the Sattva of the mind are called Sattvic foods. So, sattvic food means it's kind of a spiritual subject. When you are trying to achieve certain goals beyond the worldly realm, like say spiritual goals, then you have to follow a sattvic lifestyle. You cannot be eating the way you like, because that's not how things are going to work. You have to have a holistic approach towards, if you want to achieve your goals. So, sattvic foods are foods which are not processed. They are not processed. You are eating them in their original forms. So there are no additives, and whatever is the addition, they are all healthy. They themselves are sattvic. So some of the examples, if I have to tell you what sattvic foods look like, it could be milk, honey. We have panchamrut, which has the five aspects of the cow products. Then we have whole grains. Then we have fruits. So we have fresh vegetables. We also have some land and sea vegetables. We have fruit juices. So all these are sattvic foods. So when you are trying to boost your sattva, you have to make sure that there is more of non-processed foods, food-oriented diet, and most of them should be these naturally occurring foods that you should consume. So that way, if you see all the sages, all our gurus or saints, they're always on a sattvic diet. They would really refuse to eat anything that is not prepared by them, by themselves. And they would refrain from eating at somebody's house, probably because they are following certain rules when it comes to maintaining their brahmacharya and sattvic form. So this is what sattvic eating is about, and it is very different from pathya ahar, right? Because pathya ahar is a medical subject, and sattvic food is a completely spiritual subject.
Okay. And since you mentioned on about processed foods, what is the take for from Ayurveda on organic food? Like I'm assuming that it is recommended, but is processed food to be avoided completely, or can it be taken in certain conditions, like certain cases? How is it like?
So processed food could be processed in different ways. There could be some ingredients which are used, which may be artificial as well. Some artificial colors are added. Some artificial taste agents are added. So processed food could be processed in many different ways. Now, organic food is different from natural food. So natural food is that which has completely grown naturally. You've not really aided in the harvesting, or you're not involved completely in the growing of that food. So organic food is where all organic entities are used. Everything from the manure, everything that you've used, the soil, everything is treated with organic agents. So these are all certified as organic. While natural is something which just grows on its own without any external help. So, if you talk about what Ayurveda says about organic, yes, it does say that it's much better to eat organic. I mean, it's always better to take natural foods than getting into stuff like organic. But eating organic is way better than eating non-organic or processed or genetically modified stuff. So yes, it does talk in favor of
But I
eating
find
organic
that
foods.
a very
Ayurveda
interesting
does.
point, that food that is grown, crops that are grown without the deliberate intention of giving a bumper harvest, like there's something beyond, like beyond
Yes,
just productivity, agriculture. It looks at it in a very holistic kind of way, right? Like, yeah, that's
yes,
quite interesting.
yes.
uh
So even if you say, neem sprays, then we have these cow dung sprays. All of this can come under the natural category. So if these are used, the old ways of cultivation, old ways of farming, those were natural.
right. And there's one thing I wanted to ask you, because most of the spices that we use, Indian food today is considered like food which is endowed with all kinds of spices, right? But not many people know that
Yes,
probably before British rule, more than 3 centuries back, Indian food did not, especially the use of chili has come after colonization. Indian food was
yes,
not as spicy as it is today, and people actually used to use pepper. And the direct evidence
yeah,
of this
that's
is
right.
even today when you go to old Hindu temples, whether it is Jagannath Puri or Brihadishwara temple or in Srirangam, you will see that the temple prasada, which is served to the devotees, because they still maintain the old style of cooking, right? They have not adopted all these new spices that have come from outside. It still has pepper, and it's still not as spicy as we are used to. And the consumption of spices really destroys your palate as well at a taste level, because you don't experience the natural taste of the food. So I mean, what is Ayurvedic
Absolutely.
take on eating spicy food?
Spicy food is known to boost the libido. Okay. So it's more stimulating in that sense. And so here again, it is all about the dosha status. If you have a deranged pitta in the body, if you have an increased level of pitta dosha in the body, then you are asked to completely refrain from foods that contain spices. So spices mostly they are pungent, they are also stimulating, they have a sharp property, and they can further derange your pitta dosha. So when it comes to treating, if we are treating a pitta disease, pitta dominating disease, then we would definitely ask the patient to stay away from spicy foods. And the spices which would be advised rather would be cumin, coriander, pepper, dry ginger powder. So these are the spices which are on the healthier side, and these can be used even in the Sattvic category because they are less stimulating. They will just add a very subtle flavor to the food without really causing any imbalance in your body, any disturbances in your body at the sattva level as well. So the more the spicy your food is, the more impact it has on your rajas and tamas. So it's going to make you rajasic in nature. And that's exactly why we use all these very mild spices in our cooking when it comes to preparing pathya for certain diseases.
Okay. Uh, what exactly is Chavanprash? It's used as an immune modulator, and how safe is it to consume it on a regular basis? Like if someone is just a normal person with no actual health problems, but they just want to use it to boost their health. So, yeah. And how? What is it? A herbal? Like it's a herbal preparation, I'm assuming. So, yeah.
The first step is to really procure Chavan Prash, which has been made keeping in mind all the classical guidelines. Because now, what you get in the market under the name of Chavan Prash is anything but Chavan Prash. So there is an addition of different vegetables to it. So Chavan Prash has got to do only with amla. There should be only and only amla in Chavan Prash, along with the other additions. There are some bhavana dravya which are used, which kind of enhance the rasayan property of amalaki or amla. But what you see now, you will see everything from pumpkin, from ash god and different gods, bottle gods being added to the Chavanprash. Because it's impossible to have such a huge production of amlas because they are not so easily available. Amlas are not so abundantly available across India. And there is a season to collect the amlas when you are really targeting on using the amlas for rasayan or this kind of a therapy. You have to also make sure that you follow the guidelines of harvesting the amlas in that particular season. So Ayurveda also mentions the different seasons in which you collect different fruits so that they can have the best of the properties which have been mentioned in the text. So the amla or the chavanprash that you get these days is far from the original one which has been mentioned in our text. And that's exactly why when you're trying to achieve something, let's say the rasayan benefits of amla through Chavanprash, that's not going to happen because you've not followed the guidelines when you were preparing those. You have to have a Sattvic person preparing that Chavanprash. You also have to have all the Sattvic ingredients being used in the Chavanprash. You have to again have naturally occurring amlas in this because rasayan is not something that can just be casually consumed. One fine day you decide, you wake up and you start taking Chavanprash. You have to make sure that your body is in a specific stage of life when you are trying to boost the health through Chavanprash or things like different rasayanas. The first thing that needs to happen is that your body has to be completely free from disease when you're starting with a rasayan. Because rasayan is something that's given after the treatment is done for the main disease. So the choice of rasayan is based on the disease that the patient suffered from. If he was having something that has got to do with respiratory problems, the respiratory problems can be taken care of with the treatments by the doctor. And then to prevent the recurrence of these respiratory ailments, we would advise something like Chavanprash. Now, Chavanprash also has added benefits along with improving the respiratory health. It is also going to kind of, stop aging or it's going to delay aging. And it's going to give a newfound enthusiasm and vigor to your body when consumed after following all the guidelines of rasayan therapy. The patient also has to follow certain tenets, a certain discipline in life when he's on a rasayan. He has to have a sattvic, uh, uh, he has to have a sattva dominating nature. He has to practice everything right from waking up to sleeping. Everything has to be on time based on the guidelines in our classics. And then we have to also make sure that he has cleansed his bowels for a brief period of time before we can start giving the rasayan therapy because rasayanas are going to act to in they are going to go to the deepest of tissues And for that to happen, you have to make sure that the tissues have been completely ridden of the malas and the antigens and the toxins first. Otherwise, take consuming the rasayan is as good as just having a jam on a daily basis. And it's not really going to give you the results as you're looking for them.
Right. Uh, I want to ask you about the take on vegetarian versus non-vegetarian food, because there are, you know, there are sects within Hinduism, like the tantric sects, people who follow the Shakti path and all of that, where consumption of meat and like certain animal products is actually part of the tradition, right? So, is there anything specific or
Yes.
generic in Ayurveda on vegetarian and non-vegetarian food? And if you're eating non-vegetarian food, is there a certain type or way in which it has to be consumed or anything like that?
I think our society was way more advanced and, open minded when it came to every single thing from eating to, having different disciplines in life. It was very open minded. And that's why you see such an array of information in your texts, and everything was put out there in the open just the way it was. Like you get the description of different animals meats in your text. There's everything right from camel meat, pigeon meat, even peacock meat. Everything, the properties of every animal and its meat have been mentioned in the text. Now how we are looking at all this, in today's world is, oh my god, I mean, Ayurveda promotes eating non-vegetarian. That came as a shocker to me, because I always thought Ayurveda is all about vegetarianism, while our books have just mentioned whatever was known to them. They've just put it out openly, so there was no need to judge that in a way that really suits you. So all of this information has been made available to you. So if it is needed in future, in certain diseases, if there's an incurable disease, and say there is only one remedy to it, and it could be probably giving that patient meat soup, say peacock meat soup. Now if he is going to be saved because of that one remedy, then I think it's all worth it. Because if you're going to weigh the consequences of giving meat to somebody who's really not open to eating it, then he's probably going to lose his life. So when it comes to eat these kind of things, I think it's to be all judged based on the fact that the patient needs it or not. The patient desperately needs it, then he is given that. So it would be wrong to say that Ayurveda is not really, talk about non-vegetarianism. In fact, it talks about it in a very open manner, and it says if there is no other remedy available to a certain disease, then you should go ahead and take the life of an animal to save another life. But there are again rules to be followed. When you're killing an animal, it says that you're supposed to, sorry about that. You're supposed to offer the prayers, whatever is needed before you kill the animal, and then it's all fair the end if you're trying to save another through this. So the fact that Ayurveda talks about vegetarianism, it shouldn't come as a surprise. Society was open, and they looked at everything from this perspective, from the treatment perspective.
But in terms of, so for medicinal reasons, it's fine. But in terms of regular consumption, is it okay?
Yeah. So again, there are rules, regulations. When you're eating meat, you're also supposed to exercise on a daily basis. These days, people eat so much of meat. I mean, the meat consumption has increased so much in the last 10 years, and the amount of exercise that people indulge has gone down drastically. So it has to be directly proportional. If eating more meat means that you have to exercise more to be able to digest that, because meat is naturally heavy to digest. Any layman knows this. Meat is heavy to digest. It requires a decent amount of spices, seasoning, so that it can be digested and so that it is palatable in first place. That's not true for vegetables. Vegetables are lighter any day. There is so much of variety there, so you get what best suits your prakriti, what best suits your disease status. If you are. So meat is heavy to digest. It can increase the production of Aama if you are not really following the guidelines of preparation, if you're not really exercising on a daily basis, if you're not have active lifestyle. So if you're a sedentary individual, then Ayurveda asks you to keep away from meat as much as you can. And it still gives you different options which are lighter to digest, or preparations which you can use if you still want to go ahead and eat it. Like eating meat in soup form would be very beneficial, light on your body, on your tummy. But if you're going to prepare dishes like, by the addition of curds and marination, different kinds of recipes, use of these agents, then that is definitely not advised if you're not at all exercising. So it's crystal clear in its approach. If you are having a sedentary lifestyle, stay away from meat. But if you are into, let's say, these athletes that have to build up their staminas and resilience, and they run long distances, these are the kind of people that can digest just about anything. They can even digest incompatible matter. So everything is based on the lifestyle that he leads, the kind of lineage also that he belongs to. If traditionally your family, your lineage, it's more non-veg dominant, meat dominant, then yes, you can go ahead and do that because it's okay satmya to you. You can digest it. It comes to you through. It runs in the family.
Cool. And what, like, because there are a lot of festivals where, like in Shravan, we follow a certain, things like do's and don'ts in terms of food and all of that. There are fasting periods across the year. Sometimes they follow the lunar
Yes.
cycle and all of that. So, what is the benefit in general that Ayurveda says of intermittent fasting?
So the first shloka that comes to my mind when you talk about intermittent fasting, um, it's called Langhan in Ayurveda, and the shlokas goes this way: Langhanam param aushadham. So Langhan is considered as the best or the Shrestha form of medicine. And if you see the treatment of various diseases, which also have an autoimmune, origin, or diseases because of Ama Vikara, then the first line of treatment has been mentioned as Langhan or intermittent fasting. So, intermittent fasting is a very recent thing. The term has been coined very recently. But we have the discussion on Langhan in our text, and it has been mentioned as a main form of treatment in about all the diseases, most of the diseases which have been mentioned, which are supposed to have a Ama origin or autoimmune origin. So, if I have to explain this in very simple terminology, when the Agni is loaded because of eating too much of food, when it does not really have the capacity to digest that food, then it goes for a toss and it gets into a phase where it is overloaded and it is not in a position to digest what is being fed to it. So, the simplest thing that you could do is to give that Agni a break. So, when you're giving it a break, you're not really starving yourself. So, fasting is not equivalent to starving. And many people are indulging in these, extremist diets these days where they do not eat at all for 24 hours, they would not eat for 16 hours. But you have to understand that your prakriti is, right. Would it be right on your part to actually fast for 16 hours? Because if you're a Vata individual, again, you cannot really stay hungry for that long without eating anything. So, fasting is going to also activate the process of autophagy. So, in autophagy, what happens is the debris which is lying inside the tissues and cells for a very long time, when the stomach is not going to get food at its specific time, then it is the Agni is going to start feeding on the debris or the dead cells which are lying in your body for a very long time, which means that it is consuming everything that was not needed by the body. So the entire focus is to engulf those that debris and digest it fully, which means that you're creating or you're boosting the process of creating new cells in the body by utilizing the dead ones. So all that debris is going to be washed away from the body, which is going to lead to, it starts to delay the process of aging. So when you are fasting intermittently, when you're fasting on a regular basis, say once a week or once in 15 days, then you're also enhancing the process of autophagy. You are also enabling the process of tissue repair. You are boosting your metabolism. You're also ending up generating new hormones which had probably gone out of balance. So it is helping us restore the hormonal imbalance. And it's also going to boost your appetite, which means that you will be in a position to digest food more efficiently after a brief period of fasting. And it's not going to lead to the heaviness that you otherwise feel when you were continuously eating without a break. So giving that break to your digestive system is the biggest favor that you could do on your digestive system, and that's what fasting does. And that's why Ayurveda also advocates fasting. It's not a new concept at all. And this is exactly why. So there's our uh, forefathers, I think, they had this way of what should I say? They had this way of convincing the population that certain things are good for you. So they used to connect that with the different, festivals, and they were converted into festive rituals because everybody was really God fearing in those times. So when you connect something to the festivals, when you connect something to, God, then people do it in a much better way and in a more dedicated way. And that's why we have Ekadashi fasts, we have fasts in Shravan, and that's how this has come into existence.
Uh, like we have a lot of Ayurvedic centers which have spa treatments and massages and all of that, right? Like it's kind of a merging of some new methods and Ayurvedic this thing. But authentically speaking, how did Ayurveda deal with especially physical ailments which involve massages and all? Like Ayurvedic spas, how true do they hold to these principles of Ayurveda today?
Oh, the spas are absolutely unauthentic. So there's nothing authentic that goes on in spas. Spas are all about actually pampering yourselves, getting a pampering session at a spa. They talk about they use words like rejuvenation and restoration and relaxation. So yes, definitely they are relaxing. They also you always look forward to a session where you're relaxing a bit, um, having some oil being anointed on the body. Of course, who doesn't like it? But when it comes to the Ayurvedic massages, it is serious business. I mean, massages in Ayurveda have not just been advised for relaxation, they are also curative in their approach. So we have a whole massage therapy that has been designed to cure just about any disease. So we have massage. I mean, it's all of this is not mentioned in our Ayurvedic texts, but there have been people who have studied this in depth, and they have constituted a different science on massage therapy completely. So the mention that we have in Ayurveda about massages, it is called Abhyanga and Snehana. So Snehana means application of Sneha Dravya on the body is called Snehana. It is to anoint the body with some amount of Sneha. So which is called Snehana. And this is not necessarily a massage. You are basically just letting the oil soak, you know, or letting the body soak that oil and absorb that oil so that it can service your the joints which are prone to wear and tear. So Snehana is one of that. Then we have Abhyanga. So Abhyanga is what is mentioned in the Dinacharya. So Abhyanga is self massage usually, that you wake up in the morning, you do your own massage. This is just like servicing your body on a day to day basis. So it's ready to take on the day, because throughout the day you are going to get involved in many physical activities. You may walk a lot, you may jump a lot, depending on your occupation. So Abhyanga is basically making sure that your joints are in good shape, and they also have some lubrication, and there's less wear and tear when you are kind of getting indulging in all these physical activities. So this is how the science of Abhyanga and say, let's say, massage, came into place. But now what is happening is people are projecting Ayurveda as massage. It's kind of equating Ayurveda with massage, when massage is just a tiny aspect of Ayurvedic treatment. And we do not treat every disease with a massage therapy. So, most commonly treated diseases with massage therapy could be musculoskeletal disorders, anything that has got to do with your muscles. There's muscular pain, there are sprains, there are strains in the body. When there is a genuine need of a massage, only then do we advise a massage therapy. And also, we have something called Panchakarma, in which massage is like a subtype of Panchakarma. So, what is being shown today is that every disease, can be treated with Panchakarma. And Panchakarma are really expensive, treatments which cannot really be afforded by everybody. And there really is no need for every patient to undergo Panchakarma. There are so many diseases that can just be treated through Langhana, Shamana, Shodhana comes as the next step. If, the disease has got morbid doshas, which cannot really be taken care of with internal medications. So in that case, we use the Shodhan therapy, which is labeled as Panchakarma. So massage therapy, I think, is a very, very tiny aspect of Ayurveda, which has been kind of blown out of proportion, and Ayurveda is being projected like, the whole and soul is massage.
Yeah. Also, when we talk about Ayurveda, I think it is impossible to not bring up yoga. So, what link do you see between Ayurveda and yoga? And in general, many people, who are rediscovering Ayurveda also try to look at it in isolation as just a science, divorcing it from yoga, the philosophical, the spiritual aspects, which it's deeply intertwined with Hinduism and Hindu philosophy. So, what do you think about that? Do you think it can be just isolated as a science away from the rest of the stuff?
Of course, I think it should not be linked with religion all the time. So it goes without saying that Ayurveda and yoga are two aspects which are very, very Hindu in nature. They belong to Bharat. So there's no doubt that they emerged from Hinduism. But when you're talking about science, I think you are only supposed to look at it from the science perspective. And that does not mean we are not acknowledging the Hindu roots of Ayurveda and Yoga. But then bringing that up all the time will also take away the scientificity of Ayurveda. So if you see how allopathy functions, the modern medicine today, why is it actually ruling the entire world? It's because they are crystal clear in their approach. They are very crystal clear about their research modalities, and they will not bring things like, whatever superstitions go on under the name of traditions as well. I am not really, demeaning anything that is being followed. But then there are so many traditions which are mere superstitions these days, and there is no scientific basis to those. So if we are going to mix both of these, we are not going to gain even the best out of Ayurveda. So I think that Ayurveda and yoga are two different topics which are used for two entirely different kind of situations, and they should not really be equated all the time with Hinduism. So they do have Hindu roots, and everything there that is there, in Ayurveda and Yoga has been a part of our lives for times, immemorial. So we've been already following all of this. So it's so ingrained in us that it's very difficult for us to actually part ways now, because it's been a part of our lives now. It's totally into us. But then when it comes to, research, and when it comes to studies on these science to, actually better the science, I don't think it should be linked to Hinduism when it comes to that aspect. So it should be entirely treated as a science. And so if I have to kind of, draw a correlation between Ayurveda and Yoga, let's say for example, we use different instruments to understand the different extrinsic factors that occur. For soil analysis, we have different instruments. We have different instruments for analyzing the water, as a component. Then we analyze the weather. We have weather forecasts. So these are all different instruments that we use to understand these different entities. So Ayurveda is an instrument, okay, to understand what goes on inside your bodies. So it is an instrument to assess where you stand in life when it comes to your health. And yoga, if I have to say very precisely, is the instrument to understand what is happening at the Atma level or the Atmic level. So Ayurveda and yoga are again different instruments to understand what goes on intrinsically. So and yoga is not just something that has got to do with physical diseases. Ayurveda is mostly 80% of Ayurveda is about taking care of the body so that you can actually go and achieve the other tenets of life, which is dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So dharma, artha, kama, and moksha cannot really be achieved if you have a diseased body. If you're ailing all the time, how would you have the patience, and how would you have the even the uh, outlets to do all of this, to gain something on the other front, on the spiritual front? So the first thing that you do is to fix your body so that there's some amount of stability in the body and your mind, which will then help you, travel further and go ahead and achieve the other tenets of life: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. And yoga will help you to deepen this body and mind connection, and it will help you understand you, your purpose, and your goal, your role in this universe. And that's why they have to be studied as separate sciences, which is when I think we'll gain the best out of them.
And of course, the $1 million question on Ayurveda and allopathy, because there's always been that discussion and debate going on whether, on both sides, like many people, I think the increasing trend I'm seeing is that they're talking about using both together. And Ayurveda, anyways, since it mostly doesn't have much of side effects, it can easily be integrated even with like allopathic medications and all of that. Or that's what at least I've heard. So, how is the take with regards to Ayurveda and allopathy, and what are the recent trends you're seeing? And also in comparison to homeopathy, acupuncture, acupressure, Siddha medicine, there are other alternative medical systems as well. So, how does Ayurveda combine with them? And, like, what is your take on that?
So all of the pathies that you mentioned have their own identities, and they cannot really be mixed as such. So integration can happen, but then the integration has to have some specific structure. It's not necessary to integrate medicine in every patient, different kinds of medicines in every patient. There are so many diseases that Ayurveda can absolutely individually treat, so there is no need to use any other pathies in here when there are those kind of diseases. And the Vaidya knows, what are these kind of diseases where Ayurveda holds complete promise. So in those diseases, I don't think there is a need to involve any other pathies, like naturopathy also for that matter. Siddha, everybody has their own treatment modalities. And the true integration of medicine would, according to me, would be when you use different pathies when there is really a need to use those. Now, for example, today emergency medicine or emergency care is, the department of allopathic science, or let's say modern medicine. So Ayurveda also holds a lot of promise when it comes to emergency treatments, because I myself personally have worked in an Ayurvedic hospital where we used to handle certain emergencies, right from breathlessness during an asthma attack or tachycardia, through Ayurvedic medicines. Also we had access to certain modern equipment, because that is definitely needed. You cannot handle an emergency when you're not prepared. So it was quite possible to when you had the right amount of medicines, the rightly prepared medicines, then it was quite possible to handle these kind of emergencies. So I think integration comes into play when Ayurveda does not have the facility to actually attend to that patient. So that is when the other pathies can jump in, and that's in true sense would I think be integration of medicines. So I think that we need to have hospitals which has the facilities for offering all kinds of treatments, and then the patient chooses what he wants to choose, and the doctor also uses what is the best that for that patient in that condition. So I think that every science has its own place. Every science has its limitations. Every science has its, it has an upper hand over the other sciences. And the moment, the day the government starts recognizing this and acknowledges this, I think that the egos need to be kept aside, from all the pathies. All of them need to keep their egos aside and then integrate medicine where it's needed, but there's no need to integrate it when Ayurveda can alone treat certain diseases. So I do feel government is doing a lot for this, but what I feel is the efforts are not going in the right direction. The efforts are just to declare Ayurveda as a wonderful medicine, that's all. But is it being called a science yet? I don't think so. It's being labeled as pseudoscience till date. So there are no efforts from the government side to actually prove all of this wrong.
Are there any large scale clinical trials or testing that is happening which on Ayurvedic drugs or Ayurvedic procedures? Because I think that will kind of help build the further backup and authenticity going forward as well. If there are more proper tests and uh, things like that that is happening for where in a controlled environment, the same modern methods of testing and checking, I think that will help us in kind of reaching
Uh,
a more
definitely,
structured shape.
definitely it will help us. But the issue is we cannot really measure Ayurveda in terms of modern medicine because Ayurveda has such a unique approach. It dwells actually on the fact that every human being is unique, and no two people with the same disease are going to have the same pathogenesis because the causative factors that he indulges in are completely different from the other person. So the Ayurvedic treatment is also based on the fact that the causative factors which have been indulged in by the patient also determine where the disease goes, what course the disease takes. So we will have to come up with a different treatment modality, and rather a different research modality where we can research based on all of these things. So we need to consider every aspect of the patient's body, every aspect of what the patient has indulged in, and then only I think this can lead to something fruitful. Because if we are going to try and equate it with the way modern medicine, sees research, I don't think this is going to. We are not going to get anything out of it.
Right. So
So I
basically, the
think that the
standardization in a large sample set will not work because Ayurveda is a very customized
Yes, yes,
solution,
and
right?
I think there are researchers that are still figuring out how this can be achieved. What are the treatment modalities or what are the parameters that we can use to assess the authenticity of Ayurvedic medicine. Research is going on. We already have encyclopedias. We already have pharmacopoeias which have mentioned the actions of each and every herb that exists that is being used for treatments. So a mention has been made already, the actions have been studied. So broadly I think the world knows about the different herbs and their actions in different diseases. It is just that it is I think it's in the budding phase right now, and we just need to change the perspective a bit so we have better research parameters and
Yeah, there are places like Kaivalya Dham, which has been there for over 100 years, and it's
yes,
been doing a lot of good work in this field, right?
yes,
In
yes.
Lonavala. Uh, what do you see as the future of Ayurveda? What outlook do you have for the science going forward from where it is?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I feel somewhere the winds of change have begun, especially after COVID, because I could see how things changed during COVID, and the kind of people that used to come to us pre-COVID, the kind of ailments that they used to come up with, and the kind of ailments that they are coming with now. I think there's a stark difference. patients are considering Ayurveda as a first line of treatment for so many emergency problems as well. So they come to us for injuries, they come to us even for fractures. So we do have treatment, you know, for fractures in Ayurveda. So we also do plastering. We also use certain herbs, the pastes, the masks are used. We have certain oils, the streams of which are used. So all of this is available in Ayurvedic science as well. So I think that the future for Ayurveda looks bright as of now. But what I am disappointed at is the way our people are not really understanding the essence of the science. They just want to, they just want Ayurveda to, earn a good name without really understanding the scientificity of it. So I think our society needs to educate itself on what Ayurveda really is, what it truly holds for us, and disconnect it from the folklore remedies and home remedies. Everything that you get in the market under the name of Ayurveda. I'm sorry, that is not Ayurveda at all. So if you're using certain herbs which are used in Ayurvedic treatments, if you're using those to prepare cosmetics or wellness products, you cannot call them Ayurvedic. So anything that's Ayurvedic has to have all the parameters which are mentioned in our texts. So only then can you call it Ayurvedic. Otherwise, it's merely herbal. And herbal and Ayurvedic are two different entities again. Ayurveda has its own set of principles, and if you're following those principles when you're preparing something, anything that is mentioned in the classics, only that can be labeled as Ayurvedic. So I think our people need to understand this, because I see on social media as well. I run my Twitter account, and when I'm trying to defend my science, sometimes some people would come and completely defeat the purpose by saying unscientific things. I know that they love Ayurveda. I know that they are really respective of the Indic sciences, but they really need to know how to defend their science. Even at the society level, people need to understand this. It's not just the doctor's job. So once this is understood, I think nobody can come close to us, and we can give back to Ayurveda what Ayurveda has given to us.
I think that's a wonderful thought. And on that thought, I think we should end the show. But it's been a fascinating conversation, Vishakha. Thank you so much for giving your time.
Thank you so much for considering me.
It's been a great chat. I hope that the viewers will be able to take a lot of value from this conversation and delve deeper into the richness of this ancient treasure trove of information. Thank you everyone for joining us. See you around until next time. Dharma rocks.